Okay, Shaka Hislop, we're about a month since the January transfer window closed, so it's a good time to look back, see who did well and who didn't do so well. The busiest team in January to add to their squad was Chelsea. So let's take a look at some of the players, in fact, all of the players they brought in, and we've just managed to fit this in a full screen. How would you rate, now that you've had a month and Chelsea have had a month and still can't really score many goals, how would you rate their business in January? Who stands out and who is I'm not sure that's going to work.
Yeah, I'm not sure who stands up, certainly in a positive sense. I think João Felix came in, has done well, despite that early suspension, given his red card in his first game in Chelsea Blue. Other than that, I'm not sure where the highlight is. And to be fair to Chelsea and their signings, and Alvarez Mudryk, Badiashile signing 7.5 and 8-year contracts between them, maybe that's a long-term play. But Chelsea has a short-term need that while the January transfer window was impressive, while it was expensive, I'm not sure they addressed their short-term need. So where's the highlight? As of right now, I'm not sure I can answer that question. Maybe in 3 or 4 years' time, we look back on this and change some of our perspective. But right now, it's flat. And to be honest, Chelsea's been flat. I don't think their results have improved. I don't think their performances have improved. Because of the spending, the pressure on Graham Potter has increased. Everything has just looked disparate. And as a result, Graham Potter, who you understand him taking this job, who came in with a good reputation, given what he was able to do at Brighton, is kind of managing a very big ship that's just cut adrift.
Yeah, well, Nottingham Forest have got a Greek shipping magnate in charge who signed 30 players, and there is elements of what Forest have done this season with what Chelsea did in January. Oh, look, player, buy. It's like a kid at a candy store that wants to have everything. But they haven't been able to fit them in. The goal scoring is the problem. They haven't rectified that. What adjectives would you use to describe Chelsea's approach to the January transfer window?
Scattered, directionless, more of the same, if you want to call that a word. I understand the signs of Mudryk and Alvarez. Good players, spent a lot of money on it. Not my money to spend, but there is an argument that spent way too much, put them on far too long contracts. But again, that's Chelsea's decision to make. We'll see how that pans out. But while you can argue there are improvements on what Chelsea already had. Chelsea already had those players. They didn't address what I felt was their primary need in a goal scorer. Aubameyang came in last summer. He has not been the player that you expected, if not hoped he would be, if you're involved with Chelsea Football Club in any way. And they do nothing to address that. The one department that I felt Chelsea was strongest is through midfield. They added in that regard. They didn't add in terms of goal scorers. So now you have a pretty strong midfield. You have a lot of supply, but nobody really to finish that off. So it's not changed Chelsea's fortunes any in the short term.
Yeah, they spent a lot of money. The most they spent was on Enzo Fernandez. At least he can keep his place because Mudryk's already been dropped, as has Badiashile, and he couldn't even get a game when Thiago Silva got hurt. So if Professor Hislop was to give Chelsea a grade for what they did in January, what would you give them?
I'm an understanding Professor, Mark, as you know. So I'm kind of wanting to see how this pans out for Chelsea. So I'm thinking a little bit longer term. So if I am thinking longer term, I give them a C. If I am talking this season and judging this January on how it's affected Chelsea as far as May goes, it's a D at best, D minus. They're teetering on an F, but I'm a kind professor and say D.
You went from a kind professor and then you dropped the F-bomb. Not that one, the grade. and said it might have been possible. Who knows? And who knows if Graham Potter will still be here come the end of the season to see what happens. Now, someone or one team that has gone for quality over quantity, or so they would argue, is Arsenal. Leandro Trossard has come in to fight for that kind of left forward position, along with Gabriel Martinelli, and we have seen him start now. And Jorginho has come in. Thomas Partey is someone who was struggling with injury and a good fill-in. So Arsenal's business wasn't much, but they went quality, didn't they?
They sure did, and in all on, I'm very impressed. I'll give them a grade right now, A. And Arsenal have had some of their targets kind of stolen away from them, but that hasn't changed Arteta's approach. He knows what he wanted. He knows where he needed cover. And I think he addressed that. Trossard has come in, has been simply outstanding. I think the timing of the Trossard signing is almost divine from Arteta, in that Martinelli, who I like a lot, has been hugely impressive, but all of a sudden has hit a little bit of a lean spell, let's call it that. And Trossard has been able to come in and add firepower, add cover, add competition, and has been very good in doing that. Jorginho, a player who was not doing much with Chelsea. We've already spoken about Chelsea's midfield. Has come in and again added cover, added something a little different for Thomas Partey. And that, again, addressed a need for Arsenal, a team that's sitting top of the table, chasing Manchester City, and needed to fend off that chase. And I think they addressed some of their issues. At the same time, Arteta has shown that he continues to have his eye open for quality where he can find value. And I think that also sends a message to the rest of the dressing room. So for me, everything about Arsenal has been good. Yes, they've missed out a couple of times, but those that they did get over the line, I think has added value to this Arsenal side, put them in a better position than they were December 31st. I have no real questions, no real qualms about giving Arteta and Arsenal an A.
I think when we look at Manchester United's transfer business, it was basically supplementary in a way. It was basically, if it ain't broke, it doesn't need too much fixing. There was one thing that broke, and that was Christian Eriksen. So they went and replaced him with a loan signing of Sabitzer. Wout Weghorst, again with Anthony Martial, not guaranteed to play week in, week out. They've added him on loan as well. Seemed a bit of a strange signing at the time, and we've seen him play as a number 10 as well as a striker. But I mean, everybody in a Man United persuasion is trusting Erik ten Hag right now, and quite rightly so. What do you make of their business in January?
Again, hugely impressed. Ten Hag knows what he wants, knows the direction he wants to take this team, and know what's needed. Again, there is nothing I can question about Manchester United's January transfer business. Now, keep in mind, as a squad, this is probably as expensive as they come, Chelsea aside. The summer transfer window against Manchester United spend a lot of money. But then Weghorst, I was able to identify the issues, what he wanted, and plug those gaps and do so rather inexpensively. And I'm with you. The signing of Weghorst was an odd one on the face of it, but it's addressed the need. And Ten Hag flirted with Arnautovic previously because he wanted that big centre forward, a target man that allowed Rashford to play a little bit off him, to play a little bit wider, to come in from the flanks. And it's worked. I don't think anybody can question Rashford's form, his contribution, how good he's been since the World Cup. And while you may say that Weghorst is by no means a long-term solution for Manchester United, there's no question that as a team, Manchester United are better. So while we can question Weghorst all you want, Manchester United are better than they were before. And so again, I have no choice but to give Manchester United an A.
Liverpool did their business nice and early. Didn't do that much of it. Certainly, holding midfielders were linked with them, but they went Cody Gakpo instead, and that was pretty much it for Liverpool. Some players take time when new surroundings. Cody Gakpo straight into the side. How do you think he's done, and how do you think Liverpool did in January?
All right, the answer for both of those. Listen, I like Cody Gakpo. I thought he had an outstanding World Cup. No real surprise to see him linked with some of Europe's big boys. Maybe given Liverpool struggles, I'm a little bit surprised that they went for Gakpo. He decided to go go in January. But that being said, it's not changed Liverpool any, in all honesty. And again, maybe this is one for the longer term. Maybe this is one that we come back to in 2 or 3 years' time and poke fun at ourselves for. But in the short term, I don't think Liverpool have improved. I don't think the signing of Gakpo has addressed their issues. Liverpool's issues is an aging midfield. And while Gakpo, again, whether we want to judge him on his World Cup for the Netherlands, whether we want to judge him in 2 or 3 years' time, it hasn't addressed Liverpool's immediate need. So whether it's a symptom of the Fenway Sports Group wanting to sell the club and not really willing to spend the kind of money that you saw Chelsea spending to address their issues, well, whatever the reason, I'm sorry, there's not a lot I can offer Liverpool in terms of a high grade anyway for this January transfer window.
B, C, what do you think?
I'm thinking D. I'm not sure how I give you much of a passing grade, as much as D is a passing grade, just barely a passing grade for this January transfer window. We are talking about a team that finished second or won the title in each of the last 4 seasons. We are talking about a team that's won and gotten to multiple Champions League finals over the last, again, 3 or 4 seasons, and now all of a sudden are languishing in mid-table, have had an opportunity this is January to address that, and I don't think they did. So I'm not sure how, in the short term, I offer Liverpool much more than a D.
Did Tottenham Hotspur address the issues that needed addressing in the January transfer window with the arrival of Arno Janjuma and Pedro Porro?
I'm a little softer on Spurs. I think both those players come in, Porro and Danjuma come in and add quality to a Spurs team. I will say this though. I think I'm not sure how much Spurs has improved. But that being said, Spurs are probably thinking they're going to finish top 4. And again, we may very well revisit this even as soon as the end of the season and say, well, look, Spurs finished top 4. You said they weren't improved. But I think Spurs' prospects of finishing top 4 are less to do with Spurs themselves and more to do with a Newcastle team that are slipping. So that being said, I guess everything is relative. So if Spurs do finish top 4, you have to give them a passing grade for addressing some need this January. I am going to go C+, if not a B-. I think more C+ for Spurs.
I think they've improved the depth of their squad, and that might have been what Antonio Conte was looking to do.
For me, though, I as much as I agree with you, Mark, Spurs are just, for the quality that Spurs have at their disposal, some of their football, and maybe that's an indictment of Antonio Conte more than anything. Some of their football it does not impress me. I'm not. If Spurs were kicking off very early in the morning, I'm not setting an alarm to wake up to watch Spurs. I'm not breaking a good night's sleep.
Shaka, you're from the Caribbean. You don't know what an alarm is. I mean, you get up mid-morning. Come on.
I'm just saying.
Look, you talk about their quality. That isn't a January transfer window issue. That is if you've got the quality, you should be top 4 or maybe even
Yeah.
third or second. That's getting more out of the players you already have. That's not a January transfer window issue.
Yeah, I agree. I think Spurs are a team of quality. They've added a couple more players of quality, but I don't think it's improved their football. Yes, it's improved their depth. It hasn't improved their football a whole lot. But as I say, they may very well end up finishing top four. But that, for me, is less to do with an improved Spurs and more to do with a Newcastle that are just slipping.
I'm going to end with Manchester City. No new arrivals. Out went João Cancelo. Bit of a surprise for many when he went to Bayern Munich. So I'm not sure you can't give them a grade for not bringing anybody in. I mean, in essence, they've probably weakened the squad by getting rid of Cancelo. But I'm not going to second guess Pep Guardiola. He obviously saw that he didn't feel Cancelo was someone he wanted as part of his squad between now and the end of the season. And we've seen with some of his comments in recent games about De Bruyne, then about Phil Foden after the cup win at Bristol City. This is man management for him rather than bringing in players to fill problem positions, of which he probably doesn't really have any.
Yeah, and let's be honest, everybody's been playing catch up in Manchester City, just kind of given their domestic successes over recent years, given their spending over recent years. Everybody's been playing catch up. So the fact that nobody comes into City this January, I guess, shouldn't raise as much eyebrows as maybe that would suggest. As good as City have been, 5 points? 5 points behind Arsenal? If Arsenal win their game in hand, that's a good position to be in, but not as strong a position as we normally expect Manchester City to be in. And ultimately, I think City will still be judged on the Champions League. And that being said, I don't think City has been anywhere near as good as we've seen in recent seasons. So maybe there was a need to address that in the January transfer window, but at some point, others had to have better transfer windows than Manchester City. I'm not sure we've been able to say that for a long time. So whether we can give them a grade or not, again, I'm not sure. I guess they have to give them a failing grade, given that one player went and nobody came in. But even Cancelo, as good a player as he is, as much value as he's added to Bayern Munich, I'm not sure it's changed City an awful lot. City's problems are still City's problems. I still can't understand why De Bruyne all of a sudden seems to be a player who's in and out. I still can't understand why Phil Foden isn't giving them better run in the team. I still can't understand why Pep Guardiola some chops and changes as he so often does. That City, it's brought them success. Whether that will catch up with them this time around, I'm not so sure. In terms of a grade, let's give it an incomplete. Mm-hmm. That's still pending. There's no other way I can judge this January transfer window for Manchester City.
And trying to second guess Pep Guardiola. If you want to be intoxicated by Pep roulette, good luck to you, because he's pretty much impossible to second guess.
To that point, Mark, as I said, even if Arsenal win their game in hand, a 5 point gap between now and the end of the season is not insurmountable. We've seen City do it. City may very well go on and win this Champions League, because as much as I'm not convinced about Manchester City, you can say that about so many others. So many other big boys in European football. Probably the only consistent team. Bayern Munich have found some consistency by judging their first half of the season, but otherwise, probably the only consistent team in Champions League right now is Napoli. So maybe the draw is kind to Manchester City. Maybe they're fine form. So again, we may look back in May and a City team that's won the league and won the Champions League, and then say, well, how come we gave them a failing grade in January? But whether we see either of those happening right now, again, I'm a little uncertain. So my grade will be an incomplete.
Okay, one final question. Of the players that have come and gone, what's the best bit of business? Who's been the best signing of the January transfer window out of the six clubs that we've mentioned?
So far, Trossard. I think Trossard has come in and added, not just added quality to Arsenal, but he's come in at a time where they needed it. And this is always the challenge with young players. Outstanding talents, but young players, a little bit of a roller coaster. Martinelli a little bit of a dip right now. Trossard has come in and not only provided competition for that place, but he's found form at exactly the time and exactly the position that Arsenal need right now. We're only a month out from the closing transfer window, but for me, the biggest impact in that month has been Trossard.
Professor Hislop, thank you.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.